Hi everyone and happy Wednesday. Welcome to Psychic Song Girls and Super Robots, a Sakura Wars retrospective. We're off to a rocking start already. This is basically a preview of my convention panel that I hope to bring back next year, and I just wanted to kind of run this for some feedback, some impressions, and to just kind of get it out there. With Sakura Wars returning to the market in 2 weeks, I want to kind of spread the hype a bit. So, I'm Samantha Ferreira. I'm the editor-in-chief of Anime Herald, and I'm that crazy girl that live tweets all the live shows every month, it seems. So, going forward, I tend to use the hashtag #LordSheComing, just because it's kind of my it's just what I do. So feel free to tweet along using that hashtag, and I'll try and respond to comments and stuff like that if I can grab them. So let me kind of just start with a brief introduction though. So really, what is Sakura Wars? I mean, on paper, it's a media franchise from Sega and Red Entertainment, but it's so much more than that. I mean, this is a video game series, an anime franchise, a stage show franchise. It's just such a sprawling, gigantic thing that builds into this massive steampunk world set in the Taisho era. So basically, the first game in particular is set in a steampunk version of the Imperial Capital, where warriors of justice work under the veil of darkness to save the world from demons known as Koma. As the years went on, they added more combat reviews. So you had, say, New York, Paris, and Shanghai, among others. And in its infancy, this was basically limited to Japan. The Imperial Combat Review, which is a group of psychic-powered song girls, young women who fight the Koma battle with the help of giant robots, or just straight psychic power and psychic power in their own weapons in many cases. It was heavily inspired by all-women theater troupes like, say, the Takarazuka Review, the Shochika Review, the OSK Review. And since its debut in 1996, the franchise has spawned a lot of media. I mean, we're talking 6 mainline games now, 15 spin-offs, numerous mobile games, 6 OVAs, 9 manga and light novel adaptations, a 26-episode TV series by Madhouse, a TV series that's ongoing now by Sans again, a feature film by Production IG, 16 high-profile stage shows, including a couple of Budokan runs, and 1 unforgettable theme song. I hope you like that song, because now it's probably going to be stuck in your head for a while. You're welcome. let's kind of just dive right into things. Starting off with the building block of this franchise, the games. So, really, what is a Sakura Wars? Sakura Wars is billed as a dramatic adventure, which is basically kind of a mix of visual novel and traditional gaming elements, with the overall aim of giving the feel of, quote, playing an anime series. In plain English, I mean, it's half visual novel, half either strategy or action, depending on which game you're playing. Well, give or take. And what really ties us, basically each game is structured like an anime TV series. Every game is split into several episodes, and each episode is broken into two distinct parts, which is adventure and battle. Adventure mode is basically your visual novel mode. You explore the world, you meet interesting people, you bond with your team, you converse with the residents of the world, advance the plot. This is about 70% of your overall Sakura Wars experience. And probably the one that you'll be most familiar with by the time any game runs its course. I often joke that by the end of the first game, you'll know the Imperial Theater better than your own house. And this is brought together by the LIP system, or the Live Interactive Picture System. This was pioneered by the franchise to basically bring players into the story, and features typically timed interactions that include dialogue choices, world interactions, and the like. So Sega actually put out a trailer for this to promote their new game. So I'm just going to run that to kind of give a brief visual of that before I go through each type.
子供の時以来だから10年ぶりくらいかな。ここで何をしているの？
もちろんお掃除です。
お、さくらじゃねえか。男連れとは隅に置けねえな。デート？急に何言ってやがるんだ。
待て。
三日月のおまんじゅう10個。
え？本当に？それでいいの？そんなところかな。相手がいた方がいいなら稽古に付き合うよ。
さあ、それじゃあ始めるわよ。
それはひどいな。君の部屋に行かないのは2人で会うのがいつも公園だからだろう。
この場面なら今ぐらいの声の大きさが正解。センスあるわよ、キャプテン。
じゃあ次はヒロインを決めましょうか。神山さんはどんな女性が好みですか？これならいいヒロインになりそうですね。
それは良かったよ。
ああ、締めっぽいのはやめ。隊長、いつものやつ行こうぜ。
せーの、勝利のポーズ決め。
Alright, going through the trailer, there were a few different types that were displayed there. Probably the most common one that people know of is the Lips choice, which is probably the most common through the game. This is the one that gives you 1 to 4 options and has the player pick one, or, let the timer run out. I'm not a cop, I'm not going to tell you how to play the game. And this is used in pretty much any and all conversations that aren't meant to be, say, just info dumps, like tutorials, stuff like that. There is a branch of this called the timer lips, where halfway through the timer, options begin to kind of change to be added, removed, or even replaced. This was introduced in Sakura Wars 2, and it just became kind of a thing through 2, 3, and 4 for the most part, and 5, obviously. Then there was Click Lips, which is that one-on-one interface where you had the cursor kind of changing depending on what you're going to do. And this is typically reserved for like special events, character introductions, one-on-one conversations, and it allows you to kind of interact with the environment a bit more. The cursor changes depending on what you can do. So say, if you can observe, the cursor becomes an eye. If you can talk, it becomes a speech bubble. If you can do some naughty stuff, it becomes a shifty-eyed kitty face, and so on. Then there's the analog lips, which was that one with that weird little slidey gauge there. Basically, these are judged on how hard or how far you push the analog stick. So, for example, you might always want to kind of reach the top of that bar when you say, I don't know, Imperial Combat Review, move out, to boost the company's morale. You might not want to do that when you're trying to not get caught by Sakura in the dressing room, or you're trying to navigate an acting scene or something like that. These are real events in the game, don't worry. But there's also things like, say, the environment lips, where there's a minor environmental puzzle and you kind of have to observe your surroundings and make a solution from there. Much like the Click Lips, this is all context sensitive, and it's mostly used for, say, more urgent situations, like, say, trying to escape a rough situation or something like that. There are a few that are a bit less common, like, say, the action lips, which is basically QTE, which was used in Sakura Wars 5. The shooting lips, which was only used in one of the spin-off games, Mysterious Paris, which is kind of set up like a best way to put it is like a low-rent version of Time Crisis. You point at the enemy, you press a button, they fall down dead. Then there's battle mode, where you get in a robot, you fight demonic forces to protect Tokyo, Paris, New York, wherever you're set. And for much of the early series, this was typically handled as a strategy-based affair, where your first 2 games were grid-based, kind of like a scaled-back front mission. 3, 4, and 5 were a bit more freeform, using a custom system called ARMS, where it was kind of close to Valkyria Chronicles, if you've played that. And nowadays, it's more, well, rip and tear, not hack and slash. Sorry, I'm not allowed to say rip and tear just because I don't want to get sued by the Doom guys. But anyway, the newest Sakura Wars game swaps strategy battles for straightforward action. It kind of brings that goal of playing like an anime, a bit more close to reality, by giving the player more direct input on how they deal with situations.
歌劇団対戦で優勝するしかない。それなら無視はできないはずだ。大きな口を叩いたところでお前たちそんな力はないんだよ。
無理だべ起動
ロンドン歌劇団参上。
これが帝国歌劇団の実力なの。
フンダートプロツェント歌劇団対戦に参戦したところで勝てる確率はヌルプロツェントなのよ。隊長の言う通り恥をかかないうちに早く逃げた方がいいね。
逃げたりなんてしません。
俺たちは必ず優勝してみせる。
I'm still trying to figure out how Mecha uses a I'm still trying to figure out how Mecha uses a parasol gun, and I agree, Idan. I'm not sure how they use a spellbook, but just roll with it. So anyway, for the brief primer of the games, we'll be back to those later, don't worry. Let's kind of go to the anime, which is what most people would probably know in this part of the world, just because of our exposure. In the West, we've had a pretty wide exposure to this anime series, whether it's ADV's releases of the OVAs, Funimation releases of OVAs, the TV series, or the ongoing new TV series. I'm just kind of we've just had that vector into the franchise mostly through this, so I want to take a little time to kind of go over the various entries that make this up. And starting it all was Sakura Wars: The Gorgeous Blooming Cherry Blossoms. This was released in 1997-1998. ADV Films released this in North America under just the name Sakura Wars. This is a prequel of the first game. It kind of tells the tale of the Imperial Combat Re's formation, and it ends with this big climactic finale that is set during the events of the first game. This is actually directed by Saze-san director Takaki Ishiyama at Studio Radix, and funny enough, this was originally going to be the first of several joint projects between Sega and Bandai. When this was produced, Bandai was eyeing a merger with Sega in a stock swap that was going to be valued at about $1 billion. Ultimately, it didn't happen. It was called off because, according to, I believe this was Forbes or the Wall Street Journal. I have to verify my source on that again. Bandai mill managers practically rose up in revolt against the deal. So, while this OVA was produced, anything that was otherwise related just kind of fell apart and crumbled. But for me, this is kind of the entryway into the franchise. Let's see. ADV actually released this a few months after the final episode released in Japan. So this was like for a 1990s release, this was a super fast turnaround. I mean, we're talking about a time when the average turnaround time was 2 to 3 years, and they had this out within months. So it's kind of impressive looking back at that. After that came Sakura Wars: The Radiant Gorgeous Blooming Cherry Blossoms, which was a 6-episode OVA that ran from December 18th, 1999 through December 21st, 2000. And in 2002, this was released by ADV Films again as Sakura Wars: Return of the Spirit Warriors. Marduk Scramble director Susumu Kudo directed this again at Radix. And this was actually fairly influential because it started to kind of build the whole idea of a connected universe. It started to tie the anime into the games, into the stage shows, because it introduced elements like, say, the Dandy Shokai, and it started to get meta with its plot lines. Like, one of these stories actually saw the Imperial Combat Review Flower Division filming a movie based on Crimson Lizard, which was a stage show that was going on at around the same time. And later on, the Crimson Lizard actually became a focal point of a spin-off game, Ogami Ichiro Funtoki, which really kind of started to create this illusion of a shared universe in a lot of ways. And this was also one where they finally let characters start to breathe a bit outside of where they were, because this was kind of where I started seeing characters come into their own. You had like Maria facing off against gangsters. You had the Flower Division movie. You had a story about Sakura and a possible arranged marriage, which led to some antics between the team. You had Iris and Rennie go on a day out. It was just a chance for characters to kind of breathe, kind of just be characters more than anything. It was a fascinating character study. Then came Sakura Wars TV, a 25-episode series that ran from April 8th, 2000 through September 23rd, 2000. ADV Films released this in 2003 as singles, and it was a retelling of the original Sakura Wars story, albeit with a much darker bent. The series kind of reached a lot of the same conclusions, but it rewrote character elements, it rewrote specific arcs, and presented the first game's story in a much different light. And for the first time, this is the first Sakura Wars anime that was not animated by Radix. It was actually produced by Madhouse and directed by the late Ryotaro Nakamura, who's best known for his work on Serial Experiments Lane. While Satoru Akahori, one of the core writers of the actual series, handled series composition duties. This is one of the few releases that's actually still in production in North America, still in active circulation. Because after ADV Films, who released the series in 2003, closed up shop, the rights went to Sendai Filmworks, who has kept the license alive. They stream it on High Dive, and they've actually kept this one available on home video. They had it on DVD for the longest time. Now it's on an SD Blu-ray that we won't talk about the Blu-ray because I don't want to get angry during this panel today. And I should note that before we go further, I should note that Sakura's TV was actually in active production while the second OVA was in the works, which is always fascinating to kind of see how two different studios handled the franchise at the exact same time. About a year after the TV series aired, you had Sakura Wars the movie, which opened on December 21st, 2001. This is actually directed by Outlaw Star director Mitsuru Hongo at Production IG, and released in North America by Pioneer in 2003. The film actually got a limited theatrical release in select outlets across North America. It wasn't that many. I want to say maybe 4 or 5 theaters at the time. But this was meant to be kind of a bridge between 3 and 4, while Sakura Wars 3 and 4, while laying the groundwork for the 5th game in the series, because you started introducing elements. Well, the film was set during a time after Sakura Wars 3, where Ogami was kind of wrapping up shop in Paris and getting ready to return. You introduce elements from Sakura Wars So Long My Love, such as the character Ratchet Altair. The New York Combat Review was the seats for the New York Combat Review are laid here. The seats for the Star Division, and so on. I mean, this was one of the more divisive movies out there, but excuse me. But it did kind of lay a lot of great groundwork for the immediate future for the franchise. And fairly interesting, it was one of the more meta entries because the big climactic finale saw the Imperial Combat Review on stage acting out a play, which was The Sea God's Villa, which was an active which was actually a production that ran in the Sakura Wars Kaiyo shows just a few months before. So we're starting to see that blending of the worlds once again, kind of build this more cohesive universe and so on. Nearly a year later, though, Michi Tomizawa announced that she would be retiring in 2002 due to her getting married. So to celebrate her time with the Imperial Comic Review and to kind of say goodbye to Sumire Kanzaki's character, the team produced a one-shot OVA, Sakura Taisen Sumire, which was directed by Yusaku Kiryu and Hideyuki Matsui at Studio Radix. And oh my god, if you want to cry, this is the one you watch. This is from the very beginning to the very end, it is a flat-out tearjerker. Look, I'll get into her later, but I mean, this is one that it's a tearjerker. A year later, after everyone cried their eyes out, everyone said their goodbyes. The focus moved to Gay Paris, where Sakura Taisen École de Paris made its debut. This was a 3-episode OVA that ran from spring 2003, March through August 2003. Funimation released this in North America under the given name Sakura Taisen École de Paris, and much like the first Sakura Wars OVA, this was kind of an origin story for the Paris Comic Review. So you got to see how characters like say Glycine, how Erica, Coquelicot, Hanabi, and of course Lobelia really kind of built themselves into this world and it really cemented some roles, some characters that may have had some more shaky introductions in the original. About a year after that came Sakura Wars Le Nouveau Paris, which was never released in North America. It was another 3-episode OVA that ran from October 2004 through March 2005. It was directed by Welcome to the NHK's Yusuke Yamamoto. This is a direct sequel to Sakura Wars 3 set in the aftermath of Ogami's leaving the Paris Comic Review to return to Japan. Basically, as the Flower Division squabbled and fought to find their new leader, excuse me, they had to quickly come together as a new threat threatened the series. A new threat rose up to encroach upon the city of Paris. It was a bit more fast, a bit more loose than previous entries, but than the previous entry. But it did some great stuff with the characters that I would have loved to see a bit more of, to be honest. Definitely more so than Sakura Wars New York, New York. I mean, the best way to describe this is, who likes Punch-Out? I know it's a bad joke. It really is. This 6-episode OVA was actually an adaptation of chapters that were cut from Sakura Wars So Long My Love that would have dealt with a showdown between the Imperial Comic Review's Star Division and Cleopatra, a revived Cleopatra. Ryuichi Kimura directed it. Hideaki Koyasu, who handled series composition for Unit and Haunted Hot Springs, handled writing duties, while Satoru Akahori served as supervisor, while AIC produced. Honestly, this was... I don't know how to put this. But a lot of people pretend this doesn't exist for good reason. Joking aside, this one was actually kind of an interesting release because after its initial DVD release, it kind of fell out of the common knowledge. It didn't even receive a Blu-ray until just last month, so basically this is kind of like that black sheep of the Sakura Wars anime for the most part. I mean, it's not great, but it's definitely an interesting watch. is the best way to put it. And currently going is Sakura Wars the Animation. And this is an ongoing series. It just kicked off on April 3rd. It's being directed by Manabu Ono, who's directing Sword Art Online Alicization at Studio Sanjigan, who produced the cutscenes for the games. Funimation has a license for this, and it is a direct sequel to the newest Sakura Wars game. At this point, basically telling the tale of an all-new Moscow combat review and a mysterious girl named Clara, while dueling heroes in the form of the White Mantle and the Black Mantle, sparred out in the streets of Tokyo. It's kind of, at this point, still in its early stages, so I can't really comment too much. But it seems to be a contender for a strong entry in the franchise, regardless. But again, we're only 2 episodes in. We'll find out as it goes on. So, in addition to the games and the anime, there are the stage shows, where the dream continued in the theater. Basically, the series borrows elements from all-woman troupes, particularly Takarazuka and Shochiku reviews. And this is because series creator Oji Hiroi's aunt was a founding member of the Shochiku Review. And that really influenced him when crafting the world, the themes, the styles of Sakura Wars as a whole. And interestingly enough, this actually stretches down to the actual design decisions. Like, the Great Imperial Theater is modeled almost one-to-one after the original Shochiku Review, the original Shochiku Review's original theater. And it's played heavily during casting decisions. When working through the actual casting process, Oji Hiroi said in an interview that he actively scouted talent for the franchise himself, looking for actors who, quote-unquote, spoke as lyrically as they were singing. Or, in his own words, were able to speak as if they were singing. So he was looking for people with that specific lyrical tone of voice, that specific tenor, timbre, that would make them ideal for even going on stage. And there's a bit more to this as well. The Shochiku Review was the first major rival to Takarazuka, which kind of played out in some of the character interactions. Shochiku's flower is the cherry blossom, or the Sakura. The Takarazuka claimed the Sumire as their own. And, I mean, let's be honest, there's always been a rivalry between Sakura and Sumire. And it's always amazing.
ごめんなさい。さくらさん、人の着物の裾を踏みつけるなんて失礼じゃありませんこと。すみません。まったくこれだから田舎臭い人は嫌ですわ。そやてお下品で。さあもう一度初めから行くわよ。ごめんあそばせ。このガキ、さくらさん、口で言ってわからない人はこうよ。
So yeah, that's kind of a good idea of how these two would interact throughout much of the first game. But it became a rivalry that would run through the series, with Sakura being the plucky underdog and Sumire being that prominent top star. anyway, back to the actual stage shows. With the first game, its firm success, the series actually began what became known as Kaio shows. These musical events saw the main cast kind of acting out adventures like, say, IUNE, Sea God's Villa, Crimson Lizard, which became a bit of a hit through themselves, running through 2007 and eventually reaching the Budokan for 2 distinct specials. And really, they never actually stopped until unfortunate circumstances kind of led to the world we're in today. Even after 2007, you would still have stage shows with a smaller crew, with, like, say, Chisa Yokoyama, the Dandy Shokai, and often Urara Takano, who played Maria. And these would be played, they would play smaller venues, like festivals, things like that. And in 2019, the final Kaio show that we know of to date was performed as part of a collaboration with the OSK Review. And at this point, that was actually a return to kind of the very beginning, where they performed the Sea God's Villa, a classic play that they'd done a few times in the past. And the OSK Review, to celebrate, actually rebranded as the OSK Sakura Review for a short time. And these are always just spectacle affairs where it's just this combination of light, sound, and honestly, probably the best way to put it would be to give a brief taste of how these are. So enjoy.
クレモンティーヌはどこだ。
やっぱり聞こえる。ホンドレ様。ホンドレ様。
クレモンティーヌ。
ホンドレ様。あなたなの。あなたなのね。来てくださったのね。
そうさ、オンドレだよ。
君を守るために、そしてただ一言君に愛を告げるために。
愛を告げるために。
クレモンティーヌ、
ホンドレ様。
愛ゆえに心張り裂け、愛
So yeah, they were pretty rad. But now it's time for something completely different. I'd like to kind of take a little time to go through a brief history of the franchise because it kind of all built into what this series is today. Starting from the very beginning, I mean, this is the brainchild of Oji Hiroi, who, before Sakura Wars, was best known for creating Far East of Eden or Tengai Maikyo in 1989. Hiroi first had the idea for Sakura Wars in 1990. He actually came upon the idea with the live stage performance of Shanghai Rhapsody. Let's see. And let's see, he actually wrote a treatment for the project, which drew heavy inspiration from stage shows like the previously mentioned Shanghai Rhapsody. It was codenamed Sakura, but unfortunately, he wasn't able to get a publisher for this. It was shot down repeatedly, and the idea was shelved, but not completely gone. Funny enough, when building the treatment, he actually worked with Naki Morita and Ryoma Kaneko to fully flesh out the concept, and initially presented it in the guise of two tabletop games, which were codenamed Sakura and Sakura 2. And the game was meant to borrow heavily from Fire Emblem, which offered a similar blend of character-centric plots and strategy gameplay. But with the idea in the back of his mind, with the concept kind of shelved for the time being, tabled, he just continued his work on the Tengai Maikyo franchise, working on the second game, which would hit the PC engine in 1992. The franchise would come back to the fore in 1993 when he was actually working as a supervisor on the Tengai Maikyo Zeria Oborohen OVA. At the time, he was working with a young composer named Kohei Tanaka. I mean, you may know him from things like, say, a couple of small entries like, I don't know, Pat Labor, Gunbuster, Otaku no Video, Mobile Fighter G Gundam, Gravity Rush. You know, small projects. But according to common parlance, and multiple reports, Hiroi was so moved by Tanaka's work, they wanted to make a musical around his composition. which would revolve around, say, some of the concept that would come up through his shelved Sakura project. As fate would have it, as Hiroi recounts in an interview with in the Sakura Wars Xenia novels, Red Entertainment was actually approached by Sega Vice President Shoichiro Iwajiri around this time. Shoichiro Iwajiri at this time to produce a new game for the then in development Saturn console. Hiroi pitched his shelved Sakura idea, which was a steampunk game that featured mecha combat and female leads. At the time, Sega was looking for a game with a quote-unquote popular mascot character for the Saturn. And initially, funny enough, Hiroi was reluctant at first, but he did accept ultimately and invited Iwajiri, along with a few other people that would be key to the project, to Saipan for a 2-week outing / holiday. And over the course of the outing, Hiroi pitched Sakura to Iwajiri during this week, again mentioning that it was a excuse me, a steampunk game with mecha combat and female leads. And honestly, he was kind of skeptical as to whether Iramajiri would take this pitch, given its scope, its ambition. I mean, this was going to be a pretty big undertaking. But the VP of Sega did accept ultimately. And Hiroi, the two began work together. Hiroi's first contribution to that was a single calligraphy scroll of poetry that he had penned during that 2-week holiday period. And from here on out, the actual development began to go into place. It was an adventure game with strategy battles. The game was set during a steampunk version of the Taisho era, because Hiroi wanted to create a version of the Taisho era where the Great Kanto earthquake never happened, where Japan never saw the social and artistic reforms of the era just crumble into nothing, and be cut short in favor of a ramp up of militarism leading up to World War II. And development would take 3 years. The game was originally estimated for an 18-month cycle, but they just blew by that and went nearly double that. That said, the project did kind of attract a fairly strong group of backers. It was a co-production between Red Company and Sega RD2, and the staff was made up of a lot of all-stars. I mean, you had Kohei Tanaka doing a soundtrack, Kosuke Fujishima, who is best known for Oh My Goddess and You're Under Arrest, doing the original character designs, Hidenori Matsubara doing in-game character designs, and Satoru Akahori, who, I mean, throw a rock in the 1990s and he probably worked on it, was writing the scripts with Hiroi as a co-writer. In particular, Akahori's script changes helped to really solidify the main character, Ichiro Ogami, who was just a kind of like a nameless character for the longest time. And this really did extend down to the actual the casting too, which attracted an all-star staff again. You had, say, Chisa Yokoyama, you had Ura Takano, you had Michi Tomizawa. I mean, it was just big name after big name after big name. It was like reading off a playbill of a top-tier Broadway play in comparison. The game would ultimately finally make its way to retailers on September 27, 1996, and it became an instant darling, earning high praise from gaming magazines, the overall industry. I mean, this got a 33 out of 40 from Famitsu. It took home several awards at the CESA Awards for that year, including the top prize, the Grand Award. And the game sold through a solid 205,270 units in its opening week. It was one of the fastest selling games to that point, and would go on to sell more than 350,000 copies, becoming one of the best-selling games on the platform, period. And, I mean, a little bit about this game. This was a visual novel strategy hybrid set in fictional Taisho Japan, where players were cast into the role of Ichiro Ogami. It introduced pretty much the series as we know it today. The world, the cast, laid the foundation for the human-Koma conflict, and a lot of deep lore hooks were really kind of set from the get-go. The screenshots here are actually from an English fan translation that dropped not too long ago. It's absolutely stunning, and I recommend that you check it out if you're interested in the franchise. I can't link to that, unfortunately, but it's not hard to find. But anyway, with successes like this under their belt, it was really quick for them to greenlight a sequel. The core staff members of Akahori, Hiroi, Tanaka, Fukushima, they all came back along with the main cast members. Although they did make a few changes in some of the more logistical ends. Cutscenes were produced by Production IG this time, as opposed to Radix and basically this was more of an iterative entry. Excuse me. Probably the biggest new staffing change would be the addition of Takaharu Terada, who would become a major player as director of the Sakura's remake in Hot Blood, which would hit in 2003. But generally, this was an iterative entry. It would enhance the battle system, give better player feedback, in accordance with player feedback. Things like adding new list prompts, and basically expanding the story to have just a bigger scale. Anyone who's played the first game knows that this was already shooting for the moon in terms of scale, but it definitely played more personally. It gave like more of a personal bent to the actual Flower Division, as opposed to being just a singular unified crisis. They had these characters and they wanted to play with them. And new characters were Rennie and the Italian firecracker Soletta Orihime, both of whom would be prominent parts of the franchise through Sakura Wars 4. And like its predecessor, this second game was highly acclaimed. I mean, it's got another 33 out of 40 from Famitsu. It received the 1998 Animation Kobe Award for Best Packaged Work. Sold through 355,000 units in its first week and 509,000 copies in its lifetime to become the 5th best-selling Saturn game and the best-selling entry in the franchise ever. I mean, even to date, nothing's topped it yet. And I was mentioning earlier, a lot of the changes were mostly under the hoods. They introduced things like, say, color coding for determining type of answers. They refined the battle gameplay, refined the adventure gameplay. It was very much an iterative sequel that built on the foundation that they hit on with the first game. In particular, the biggest changes were the double lips prompt, which was multiple lips prompts in rapid succession. Change lips, which would where the prompts would change midway through a timer fill. And more multi-character lips, where you would negotiate conversations with multiple characters instead of one-on-one. But anyway, that success continued to build until 2000. In April 2000, Sakura announced the Sakura 2000 project, which was a major push for the franchise, aimed at bringing it into a new millennium. You're going to find that they really like these flashy projects. Excuse me. And the actual announcement for the announcement of the project was announced in October 18th, 1999. So I do apologize for the slide inaccuracy. But this was meant to be a big, comprehensive new way of bringing the franchise into the new millennium. This was where they announced Sakura Wars 3, Dreamcast ports of Sakura Wars 1 and 2, a multi-part drama series, the anime TV series, the movie, a spin-off game based on Shonen Red, which never actually happened. You're going to find that happening a lot too. Hanagumi Tyson Columns, the Dreamcast, and so on. The Game Boy spin-off. I mean, this was where the roadmap for the next 2 or 3 years was basically announced. The biggest of those, though, was Sakura Wars 3. Initial planning on this actually began midway through development of the second game's development cycle. Instead of being an R&D 2 joint, this would actually be handled by Overworks. Which brought a lot of changes to the series' DNA, including, but not limited to, the arms battle system, a much wider scope, where you are finally starting to see the characters break out of just that single location setup, going out to explore powers, going out to see various parts of the world they live in. And at the same time, introducing an all-new Paris Combat Review's Flower Division. So this is where you had Erica Fontaine, you had Glycine Bloomer, you had Coquelicot, you had Lobelia Carlini, you had Hanabi, and I mean, this is where some of the most cherished characters of the franchise really kind of came to be. And the series launched on March 22nd, 2001 to critical acclaim. It received a 34 out of 40 from Famitsu, the highest score that the series received to date. Sold through 216,000 copies in its opening week, 304,000 on lifetime, becoming the seventh best-selling game on the Dreamcast. It received a PS2 port in 2005, which sold through another 51,000 copies. And this was actually originally meant to delineate a new direction for the franchise, where Ogami would start a kind of like a globe-trotting adventure where he would oversee various combat reviews in countries across the world. The next one would have been, say, New York, then Shanghai, then... I'm just kind of spitballing here. I don't know the actual order outside New York, but it would have been like, say, New York, Shanghai, Berlin, and so on and so forth. But the team actually had other plans for that, which I'll get to in a few moments. I mean, because this was actually one of those games that was highly transformative. I mean, this introduced elements that are still used today, like the Kinematron, a communication device that would become a mainstay. It's still in the new game as the Teletron, the ARMS battle system, which would see a more actiony feel to the overall flow of battle. The analog lift front made its debut here, which is still being used today. And this is going to seem very small, very minor, but for the first time, all the artwork actually took up the full screen. Previously, it was all presented in these little tiny frames that would be like about a third of your screen, with a text box at the bottom and just this big flowery border all around. So this is the first one to kind of break free of that and give an actual full screen picture of what's going on. At the same time, the actual adventure mode expanded out to cover the entirety of the City of Lights. And there was a lot to celebrate from this, but unfortunately Sleeping Late was not on the docket.
おはようおはようボンジュールおはようおはようボンジュール大神さん大神さんおはよう大神さん早く起きてよボンジュール今日も元気にボンジュールくるくるくるくるくるくる回ってボンジュールボンジュールボンジュールボンジュールおはよう大神さんヘイ
But with work done on Sakura Wars 3, they were originally going to send Ogami to New York to handle the New York Combat Review for the for Sakura Wars 4, which would have launched on a PS2. But the team had other plans for that. They basically worked through a final act once they heard the Dreamcast was discontinued. This was Sakura Wars 4 was meant to be kind of a celebratory entry in the franchise. It was, instead of being multiple episodes, it was structured as 3 acts, like a play. And it was actually the last game to feature a performance by Michi Tomizawa as Sumire Kanzaki until recently. this was meant to be kind of like a swan song, and it was actually the last game to feature Noriyuki Oba as a producer. And the game actually launched to critical acclaim. This actually had a 37 out of 40 in Famitsu. Sold 207,000 units in its first week, 257,000 lifetime, and it actually got a PC release about 3 years later. But with the Dreamcast behind it, the franchise had to look to the future, and Oji Hirai had his sights set on the world. On July 1st, 2002, Oji Hirai announced the Sakura Taisen World Project. This was meant to bring the franchise to a global audience. And 7 games were announced, including a remake of the first game and Sakura Wars 5. During a presentation, Hirai stated, "Today is the dawn of a new Sakura. I am convinced that as the director of Sakura Wars, I'm confident that this series can be accepted by people all over the world." Unfortunately, his dreams just didn't come true until much later, but some of the games that came out of it were definitely interesting. I mean, 7 games were announced, including Sakura Wars in Hot Blood, Sakura Wars 5 Episode 0, an action-based prequel to the Sakura Wars So Long My Love, Sakura Wars 5 So Long My Love, a game set during the Great Koma War, simply titled Koma, was never released. Sakura Wars Mysterious Paris, which was a spin-off that focused on an all-new secondary two all-new leads, as well as a Paris combat review to solve a mystery that was going on in Paris. Sadly, a lot of these weren't released though, including Sakura Wars Mysterious Imperial Capital, Koma, which was, again, set during the Great Koma War, and Sakura Hime Nishiki Emaki, which was it was set during the Warring States period. Not much is known outside of that, unfortunately. Here we are. For Koma, it was originally meant to kind of flesh out that story that was referred to in the previous games, kind of tell the story of the anti-Koma battle squadron during the first Koma Wars, which was always hinted at, but always had the air of mystique around it. Sakura Wars Mysterious Tokyo would have Mickey and Kojiro from Sakura Wars Mysterious Paris come back to the fore as they solve a mystery in Tokyo. And Sakura Hime Nishiki Emaki is only known as to be a quote-unquote symbol of the Sakura Taisen World Project's purpose of broadening the time and space of the series. That's all we really know outside of its Warring States period pedigree. Of those, though, we did see a remake of Sakura Wars titled Sakura Wars in Hot Blood, or Atsuki Chishioni, which first hit stores on February 27, 2003. This was a ground-up remake of the first game aimed at growing a fan base and kind of introducing this original story to a new generation. It featured new anime scenes by Fresh Energy. It featured the arms battle system, new story chapters, and basically a complete ground-up rebuild of how the game was carried out. That said, still had the same great theme song. anyway, following the success of Sakura's In Hot Blood, we had the fifth mainline entry in the franchise, Sakura Wars So Long My Love, which the original title, Saraba Itoshiki Hitio, is actually the Japanese translated title of American author Raymond Chandler's novel, Farewell My Lovely. So, for a lot of people, it was actually before the official release came through, it was referred to in a lot of fan circles as Sakura Wars Farewell My Lovely. Just a little bit of trivia there. This was the first game to not star Ogami as lead, and instead handing reins over to Shinjiro Taiga, who was Ogami's cousin. And it was basically a brief rework of a quick rework of the idea that was originally pitched for Sakura Wars 4 before they kind of shifted their priorities. It was decided at that point that it was probably best to use this opportunity to close off Ogami's story and shift to a new generation of combat review. Where Ratchet Altair, who was a key part of the movie, would become a persistent link to the OG generation through the game. The game took in a lot of feedback from gamers and even people that worked on the previous games to kind of expand on exploration, on combat. It gave more choice in where you could go and visit in adventure mode, so you could actually see more of the actual landmarks. You could explore a wider array of locations, and it introduced air combat into the battle mode, which gave a bit of a new direction on how you could progress in terms of the overall flow of battle. It's the first game in a series to feature a canon non-binary main character in Subaru. They're awesome. Just yeah. And funny enough, Hirai chose New York originally due to its reputation as the land of opportunity, and in particular, he also gave a lot of credit to the I Heart New York marketing campaign. And excuse me. For the actual cast designs, they kind of followed their philosophy of breaking with the past by changing a lot of traditions. Character names were actually named instead of after flowers like we saw in Sakura Wars 1 and 3, we had characters named after stars and constellations. You had Gemini Sunrise, Sagita Weinberg, Subaru Kujo, Rika Rita Aries, Diana Caprice, and instead of a flower division, you had the star division. The series brought together the core dream team that worked on the previous 4 entries, which included Hiroi overseeing, you had in directing, Fujishima and Matsubara designing characters, Kohei Tanaka writing the music, and Satoru Akahori co-writing the scripts. And this was actually meant to be a lot bigger than it was. The game was originally meant to be 11 chapters, but due to time constraints, it was cut down to 8. The missing 3 chapters would have been firmly in the middle before Nobunaga kind of became a thing. The New York Combat Review would have had to face a threat from a revived Cleopatra. This would later be reused in the OVA Sakura Wars New York NY, New York, New York. And despite a strong reception from the media, from outlets like Famitsu, the game was a retail disappointment with the lowest sales in the franchise. I mean, this launched just with just 112,000 sales in its first week. It would only shift 144,600 lifetime. Outside of spin-offs, this is actually the lowest mainline. This is the lowest performing entry in the franchise. Although not, and I got a little ahead of myself. I got a little ahead of myself just kind of talking about what this brought into the franchise with its refinements. But in addition to the battle refinements, in addition to the exploration, it gave in things like, say, action lips. It gave a lot of just over refinement and polish to make this probably one of the best feeling games to play in the franchise to date. I mean, funny enough, this is actually, despite its low sales in Japan, this was the one game in the franchise to be released in North America and in Europe. The series, NIS America, NIS America, released the game in North America and Europe as Sakura Wars So Long My Love. The game was released as its original PS2 form, as well as a brand new Wii port, which was using a global release. I believe the PS2 version was only in the North American version. As part of the release process, NISA commissioned a brand new English dub, which featured some pretty big names. I mean, you had like Laura Bailey playing Gemini Sunrise, for example. But it did kind of, it wasn't a, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. It was a release that was met with general positivity, but NISA did kind of make a few changes to character names and dialogue changes between the two releases. In particular, the three most prominent were Rika Rita Aries being renamed to Rosa Rita Aries, Sagita Weinberg being renamed to Sharon Archer, and Plum Spaniel being renamed to Cherry Cocker. But anyway, that's localization fun. Just localization trivia. And though it was reviewed highly, the game was a sales disappointment in the West. NISA has never released full sales data on this. They've only said that it's sold through quote-unquote over 10,000 units. NISA president Haru Akinaga actually explained in an interview with Silicon Era that it's tough to localize Sakura Wars because of the huge amount of text. It took more than 2 years to complete the localization. That's more time than the development of the Japanese version itself. So, sadly, things could have gone better. After Sakura Wars 5's failure in retail, Sega basically put the franchise on hiatus. The final game, Dramatic Dungeon Sakura Taisen Kimi Arugatame, which was basically a dungeon crawler for the DS, like a roguelite, hit stores in 2008 to a collective view on the game. The game basically came and went without much of a thought at all. The final major stage show, ran in 2007 as a final Budokan show. The Sakura Cafe, which sat atop Ikebukuro's Sega Gigo location from 1998 until that point, closed its doors in 2008. I mean, they basically kind of just folded the franchise up, put it away, seemingly for good for a lot of people. That's why Sakura Wars 2009 kind of presented an unexpected rebirth for the franchise. I mean, at Sega Fest 2018, Sega president Haruki Satomi announced that a new project in the franchise was in the works. They didn't say much. They just revealed a slide featuring floating Sakura with some text on it. But a month later, Satomi confirmed with multiple occasions that it was going to be quote-unquote more than a game. So we were kind of left in limbo for quite a while, considering that from roughly April 2018 through February 2019, there was complete radio silence. Excuse me. But on February 26, 2019, Sega filed a trademark on quote-unquote Sakura Wars with the Japanese Patent Office. This would be the first time that they actually filed a trademark for the English mark in any format. And about 2 weeks later, on March 18th, 3 weeks later, on March 18th, 2019, Sega America released a survey to users that included the English shells for all 5 mainline games, a first for the company to ever do so. And around the time the survey dropped, Sega of Japan was playing this big blowout for Sega Fest 2019, like a full art gallery of work from the franchise, featuring original pieces from Kohei Tanaka and Kosuke Fujishima and Hidenori Matsubara, a pop-up Taishiro Mondo store, a pop-up cafe. This was going to be huge. And then on March 29th, Sega finally announced Sakura Wars was coming back. An hour after the reveal, a worldwide release was announced as the trailer streamed in every country that it possibly could. Every nation that was going to get the game.
俺一人で戻ってきた。
歌劇団なんですから。
この力は
どういうこった
絶対に守らない。
よし行くぞ。
ちょっとみんな。
分かったって押してまいる。
大正桜にロマンの嵐。私たちの運命が動き出す。
Yeah, I don't think a lot of fans slept that night. I feel bad for my poor roommates. But anyway, with the new game came a new dream team of an all new dream team. Kohei Tanaka returned to the project as a composer, but for the most part, the old guard of Oji Hiroi, Kosuke Fujishima, Satoru Akahori, they all stepped aside, giving their blessing to the new generation of stewards. So the director of the game was Skies of Arcadia director Tetsuya Osuba. Character designers included Tek Kubo, who did something called Bleach, whatever it is, and Masashi Kudo, who were taking over for Fujishima and Matsubara respectively. Plus a huge slate of guest character designers, including Boon Boon, Noisy Ito, Shigenori Tsurajima, Yukiko Horiguchi, and Humikana Shimada and Ken Sugimori, and yeah, this was just a powerful team. Then there was the scenario written by 428 Shibuya Scramble writer Jiro Ishii. So they definitely set out to make a team that would have the same impact that the first one would back in the day. And man, what a wild year. During that year, we saw announcement of a manga adaptation, an anime adaptation, and a stage show. Unfortunately, the stage show has been indefinitely postponed just due to COVID-19, which just the reality of the world that we're in. A run-up to the release, which included pretty much monthly live streams, including these three amazing goofballs that you see before you. So that was Mami Yamashita, Yohei Zakami, and Katana Producer. More than a dozen co-branding events were announced, including partnerships with, say, Super Robot Wars, Star Ocean Amnesis, the Akiba Ultra Winter Event. Even Wendy's and Lawson were getting in on that action. So they really went out there and put that name out there ahead of the game's release. I mean, they even have HG model sets from Band of Spirits that shipped this year. And the game made its debut on December 12th, 2019. Sold through 140,376 units in its opening week. 166,771 lifetime, not counting digital. It pushed the series franchise sales past 4 million, won the Future Vision Award at the 2019 Game Awards, and as of right now, it's looking toward a Western release in just under 2 weeks, exactly 13 days from today. And this is a new direction for the franchise. It's a soft reboot of the series set in the year 1940. The original comic reviews were lost in the Second Great Koma War, which was in 1930. And during that time, the Imperial Comic Review fell on hard times and it's on the verge of closing. They are crippled. Their units are decrepit. Their staff is lacking. And they actually have to rely on Shanghai for a lot of just their greater protective duties of the city. It's really just being kept alive by the people that want to succeed at this point, including Sumire Kanzaki and the people who are actually in the review. Seijiro Kamiyama, a disgraced Navy captain, is tasked with leading this new review to restore their former glory while protecting the capital at the same time. Basically to make them a force on the stage, make them a force on the battlefield once again. And the game does launch worldwide on April 28th, 2019. This is going to be Sega's first in-house release of the series. It's being translated by Inbound Games, who handle the Yakuza series. The anime sequel, Sakura Wars the Animation, is currently airing in Japan. Manga series Sakura Wars the Comic is ongoing in weekly on Jump. And honestly, after that, we're just not sure. The sky's kind of the limit. And there's a lot to just kind of digest and work through at this point. But anyway, that brings us to today. And yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. So yeah, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or visit me at Anime Herald. And I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. But for now, I guess that'll do. If this is definitely a trial run, something I'm looking for kind of feedback on. So feel free to let me know if there's anything you liked, you didn't like, and what have you.